I don't have my 2DS XL to show you New Leaf, nor do I have the ability to even capture gameplay if I did. However, I want to chat about something. Many of you may have started your Animal Crossing journeys with New Horizons, and that's totally fine. I have experience playing New Leaf in Pocket Camp, but none of the older games. I want to talk about some of the things that I miss from New Leaf that really should have made it into New Horizons. Hopefully Nintendo will bring these things back in the next iteration, although who knows. The post office. There was something cozy about going into a separate building to send your mail, talking with Phyllis or Pelly, even though Phyllis could be really rude at times. It added a lot of personality to the game. This was also where you paid your loan and access to the ABD. In New Horizons, though, we have the postcard stand at Dodo Airlines. You do still have to talk to Orville in order to send a letter, but I feel like it's much less personal this way. You could actually buy paper from Nook's Cranny, well, the iteration of Nook's Cranny in New Leaf, and use that stationery to write your letter, then send it off in the mail at the post office. The kiosk obviously is what we have at Resident Services, where you can access your ABD as well as the standalone ABD item. But there was also something else about seeing Pete, the mailman, wandering around your town, and he would constantly ask me to empty my mailbox because it was always too full and he needed to put more mail in there. I also liked the aspect of villagers showing your letters off if you sent them some. This wouldn't always happen, but they might occasionally bring it up as a memory to you, and they would also potentially bring it up to any visitors that you may have over in your town. Retail. Did you know Reese and Cyrus used to be a mom and pop small business? Well, I don't know if it's actually mom and pop because I don't think they have kids, but the point still stands. They owned retail, which was essentially a flea market space, and also your main way of selling items, because if you sold anything to Timmy and Tommy, they would say that they were sending a cut of the proceeds to retail as they partner with them. However, that's not all. You could take furniture that you found or had in your home or had no need for, put it up in a flea market space, and have a villager buy it. You could try to convince them to anyway. You would also find villager items from their homes or various random things that they would put up for sale. It was a great way to kind of recycle furniture. Cyrus was there for the customization aspect. This was also where you sold turnips. Honorable mention to the one year I turned my retail into a Christmas tree store because I wanted all my villagers to have a festive item in their homes. There was no Happy Home Paradise DLC where you could design your villager houses. You could kind of get around it a little bit if you gave them items of the proper size, or if you modded your 3DS, you could go into the editor and swap out some of the furniture, but it wasn't a one-to-one thing. I really miss retail. We do have Cyrus's RV at Harv's Island, but Reese doesn't do anything. She literally just stands there as his hype woman. It's really disappointing. I wish that she would do something more substantial. I don't know what. I've talked about this in the past. That's also not to mention their whole wedding anniversary photo shoot thing that we do every June, because that's not really relevant here. Building customizations. Your town hall and train station, and even your own house, had several customization options you could choose from. The town hall and train station ones, I believe, were public works projects, kind of similar to the infrastructure things that we do in New Horizons, except slightly different. It was really cool to be able to change them up and theme them after something, like if you wanted a Zen town hall and train station, or a fairy tale themed one, or something modern. You could do this with your home exterior as well through Tom Nook at Nook's Homes. This was a little different though in New Horizons. You could kind of change your exterior of your house a bit with the 2.0 update, but there weren't as many options available. I do like some of the older ones. I wouldn't mind having an actual castle without having to put the pieces around my house and fake it. Unfortunately, there are obviously no building customizations in New Horizons. That is, unless you fake it with pieces that you put around the building, or if you mod your Switch. Main Street. The vendors and shops that we know and love, such as Kix, the Able Sisters, and so on, even Harriet from Shimpoodle, had their own standalone shops on Main Street. I loved this aspect, as it brought them out of your town and into a shopping district. You could also access what was called the Happy Home Showcase, where if you street passed somebody with your DS, their house would show up, and you could order items from them, that is if they had New Leaf obviously and played, and enabled their house to be shown in the showcase. Unfortunately, that is defunct because all all of the 3DS and Wii U online services have been shut down. But the fact is, we don't have anything like that in New Horizons. We kind of have Harv's Co-op as a replacement, but again, that's not a one-to-one thing. Main Street was also where you could access the Dream Suite, the museum, Katrina's Fortune Shop once you unlocked it, the post office, Nook's Homes, where you could customize the outside of your house, as well as the nightclub, Club LOL, where KK Slider would perform on Saturdays, and you could also talk to Dr. Shrunk, as that's how you would earn reactions. I would love a separate shopping district in the next Animal Crossing game. This is also where Timmy and Tommy's store was, as you could later evolve it into the Emporium, and Gracie would take over the top floor, and Leaf would have his little gardening corner. It was so great seeing all of the NPCs working together and having this central hub to shop. You could even find villagers that used to live in your town. They would sometimes make an appearance, and if you talked to them, they would recall their time in your town. The Roost being its own separate building. I know this was a point of contention before the 2.0 update came out, as we weren't quite sure whether or not the Roost was going to be in the museum or if it was going to be its own separate building. I personally would have rathered it be its own standalone place. I know that would have messed up a lot of people because most of us already had our forever layouts done, but it bothers me that it's not symmetrical in the museum. There was something about going to a separate coffee space. I like the collaboration between Blathers and Brewster, but there's really nothing to do in the Roost. You can't work as a barista like you could in New Leaf. KK doesn't perform like he did in the older games prior to New Leaf. You just go there for coffee. Yeah, you can call amiibos there, you can go with your friends, you'll run into NPCs and your villagers occasionally, and you can get takeout coffee, which is nice. But I wish there was a little more to it, even that Brewster could store your gyroids, which again, he can't do. The lack of symmetry though on the top floor brings me to my next point. The museum shop. Celeste ran her own museum shop in New Leaf, and I think she did this in previous games as well. I know she had an observatory, I think, in Wild World City Folk era, but the museum shop was so cool. It sold various museum pieces of furniture, such as display cases, ropes, things like that we have now from the 2.0 update, but you can just get that from the Nook Shopping, Nook's Cranny, or Paradise Planning. She wasn't just relegated to handing out star fragments on meteor shower nights. She actually was a small businesswoman, and you could donate money to the museum to open up exhibit rooms, which were on either side of her shop space. I used one of mine to put a bunch of fishing and bug tourney trophies that I had won because I had nowhere else to put them, and they were taking up a lot of space in my storage. Tortimer Island. Tortimer and his family ran an island which was always in the summertime. It wasn't unlocked right away, however, eventually you could pay Cap'n 1,000 bells and he would take you there. I can't recall if the trips were unlimited or if they were only once per day, but regardless, you could also go with friends, as there were multiplayer minigames. You didn't have to go with friends, you could do these minigames on your own. If you did them, you won medals, which was a special currency on the island. You redeemed them for things like a wetsuit, various other pieces of nautical and mermaid type clothing, as well as special papers to be able to go to an online sort of chat room kind of area called Club Tortimer. Let me rephrase that. It's not a chat room. You could go and see either people from your own continent or anybody from around the world. It was a bunch of other players. You could do the same thing on Tortimer Island as you could there, and you could have different items that you could get too, as well as they would refresh every time you came and went. I never did this, and with the online services being shut down, it obviously is no more. But back to regular Tortimer Island. Since it was always in summer, you had the chance of either finding coconut palms or banana trees on your island, as well as some of the tropical fruit trees, such as lemons, mangoes, durians, and lychees. We don't have these fruits in this game, and I'm going to get to that later. This was also where you could catch special creatures, such as the hermit crab, a few sea creatures, and a few fish. You could ship everything back home that you caught in a storage basket that had a finite amount of space, or sell it to Cap'n's daughter Layla for an abysmal price because she's like 5 years old in this game and doesn't know math. More fruit availability. In addition to the fruit that I mentioned earlier and the ones that we have now in New Horizons, there were also persimmons, which were just a thing that you could have. New Leaf also had perfect fruit, which were shiny versions of the oranges, apples, peaches, pears, and cherries. Think of it like a shiny Pokemon. You could only have a shiny perfect version of your native fruit. So in New Leaf, my native was pears, meaning that I could only have perfect pears, unless I modded my Switch and wanted to put other perfect fruit teas in my town. However, if you shook a perfect fruit tree that was not your native in your town by modding, the tree would die. That's another thing too, is that we had dead trees, dead flowers. You had to water your flowers in order for them to actually grow, as they would wilt occasionally. It was interesting. Anyway, back to the whole fruit thing. I really don't understand why they didn't put more of the tropical fruit in New Horizons, considering we have the whole island getaway package deal going on. It doesn't make any sense. It would have opened up for a lot more fun things, like for example having a lemon grove. I know people have done this with their modded Switch, but that's not available to everybody natively, and I hope that they bring it back in the future games. Perfect fruit would sell obviously for a lot more money, and it would give your villagers a lot more friendship points if you gave it to them. You did also have the chance of finding a rotten fruit. Like I said, if you shook a tree and it died, the fruit would have a chance of being rotten. You would have to toss it, as if you accidentally gave it to a villager, like I did one time, they would get really mad. Honorable mention to the town tree. This was in your plaza and you planted it on your first day in game as mayor. It grew over time as you played, and eventually you could sit on the planter box and it would show you a town history. It was really, really cool, and we have nothing like this in New Horizons. I wish they brought this back. Anyway, I know I missed some things, but those are just a few of the hitters of what I missed from New Leaf, and I'm hoping that we get them in the next game, because there's no hope for us getting them in New Horizons. Let me know what you think down below, especially if you played New Leaf or even any of the older games and you have aspects that you want to see in the next Animal Crossing. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this. Please leave any comments, feedback, and suggestions down below, and subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!